In this video, I wanted to bring together some of the techniques that we've been going over in previous videos. This is some work by Peter Tarka, a 3D artist, and you can see what he's done is take some basic shapes like primitives or simpler forms that aren't crazy complicated to render, but just made some really pleasing kind of geometric compositions, and done a few materials and really done some nice things with lighting in it. So I just wanted to approach this type of work and make something kind of on the spot right now. I'm actually not coming into this with any sketches or anything, but just trying to, I have some reference in mind, and I'm just going to try to build something similar and maybe, just go over maybe the process of how I would go about doing it. So I'm going to open up Cinema 4D and get started. Here is my project file all set up. I've got, I'm using R25. I've got the standard new layout set up. I've also opened up my material manager. If you don't see that, that's here, so I can start adding some materials. But I think the first thing I want to do is actually just kind of set up or just look at the composition and start to bring in some objects in here. So I will sometimes be switching between all four views to kind of get a sense of what I'm creating. But here's the main view, and I'm pressing the button 3 to kind of rotate around. And what I'll do is just maybe bring in some shapes and talk about how I might approach these things. So well, let's start with the sphere. It is set to render perfect, so even though it looks kind of jagged, it will show up like this. Within all of these primitives, there are some different settings that you can access in here. Let's see. So I would say you can play around with these primitives and try to add some different pieces in, but maybe I'll move this up, and mathematically I might also, if I really want things to fit, I might keep track of how big this is, where it is in XYZ space. I'm just kind of getting started, so just wanted to play around with some forms. Like I said, maybe I'll pick something like a Taurus, which you can see is like a little donut. I hit R to kind of rotate that around. And again, let's go into the options here and see what kinds of things there are. We could play with the pipe radius. So even just using these primitives, I feel like you can, I probably wouldn't mess with the ring segments too much, or I would maybe make them a little, I add more so that they would look a little bit nicer when I did a render. Again, you can change in between different display modes, and so sometimes seeing the geometry helps you. Like this is actually, this is actually kind of an interesting shape. Maybe I like this shape and I could play with that, or if we really want something smooth, we need a little bit more geometry. So, maybe I'll do both of these things. I'm gonna kind of play around with them. I'll make a copy, hold down Control, click and drag, and maybe I'll just move this over. Again, I'm kind of just freewheeling here, just going for it. But I actually kind of like that sort of maybe triangular look, or maybe it's, maybe it's more like something like this. That's kind of interesting to me. We could play with the radius. As we go. Maybe I'll start to move these things around. Again, switching views here, maybe you want some things forwards and backwards, and you want to be careful that sometimes your shapes aren't intersecting. Sometimes they'll look okay, but then just looking at these different views will give you a little bit more clarity. So I'm going to kind of mess around with that. All right, so I'm going to keep going with this, and I just turned this Keycaster app on so that you can start to see what I'm doing. I want to call out something that kind of happens a lot in this process. I have these different views. I had the right view set up. I accidentally rotated this, and if you ever want to undo a camera move or a movement of your perspective, you can do Shift Command Z, and that will undo that move, because sometimes you don't. I don't like to offset these. I like to keep them the way they are. So that might be helpful. Again, I'm just kind of making some shapes here. One thing I saw in the reference imagery was this kind of like grid-like structure. So I thought maybe I could show how you might make something like that in Cinema. So I would start off probably by, that looks like kind of like a plane that was set up and then that was created, and a grid was created off of it. Okay, so the way we'll approach making a shape like that is grab a plane, and you can already see there's kind of like a grid-like structure on this. There's a tool in Cinema 4D called the Atom Array. I'm going to search for it. Do Shift-C. It's called Atom Array. Sometimes I forget where it is located exactly with the new... Actually, you can see... let me see. I do kind of forget sometimes, so a lot of times I'll just do that search thing. For me, it's a little bit faster. So what we'll do is we'll grab the Atom Array, and the Atom Array kind of creates that grid-like structure. We'll drag this plane as a child underneath it, and you can see that it created this array here. And the array has two options. One is the sphere here, and you can play with that sphere. And right now you saw that the detail was a little bit low, but you could make that kind of fine. So if you like the look of that, you could set that up like that. If you don't want those spheres to really show, I find that if you just bring this down, I would say if you set the sphere and the cylinder radius to the same value, then it will look like there's no sphere there, so you can kind of get that look. And again, you can play with the options. Maybe we want something a little bit skinnier. 1.5 could be okay. And what's great about this is you can change the geometry here. Maybe you want more or less, and this will kind of change with it. So that's kind of a fun way to get like a grid kind of structure back there. And maybe if we want it to be, we can change the width and the height. So maybe it's 200 by 400, and then let's say this is 4 and 8 to make it kind of square-like. So it's it's doubled in the width, or it's doubled in the height, and we're just going to place that down. Again, sometimes that's confusing to me. I like to look at the multiple views. Maybe this is in the background, and kind of set this up. One thing I might want to do now also, I'm just kind of, again, thinking as I go, is maybe make a camera or like choose an angle. I mean, I could just keep changing my mind, but maybe I like a certain angle and I want to stick with that. I would probably put a camera in here just so we can control that, lock it down, and maybe play with the lenses and things like that. So I'm going to bring in a camera. We'll set that up like right now. And if we want to view what the camera sees, we'll click on this button here. So now we're in here, and we might also want to set our settings. I think my final output I want for this is 1080 by 1080, so I'll set that up, and you can kind of see the edge of the framing, so that's helpful for me as I try to set up this shot. And I can right now I'm selecting the camera. You can see it's active, and I can move it around, and oops, I changed the setting here, that's why it changed. I can move it around and try to like get the framing that I want. And if I like the look of that, one thing I like to do is use a rigging tag and just throw on something called protection. So what that does is now this is actually locked in place so that I don't accidentally move it around. If you want to get rid of that, you could always you could drag it off and place it somewhere else. Now I can move it around, and then when I want to lock it again, I could put it back on. To me, that's been something that's kind of helpful. I think what I might do now is build like a base for this to all sit on. Maybe there's a big cylinder. We could pull this out separately. It's kind of like a podium, and the edges, I think we need more more edges here to get it smoother. And yeah, again, I'm trying to frame it, so maybe I want a little bit of space along here. I want to make sure, I think I'm touching, I think it's pretty close, but it's a little bit off. If you actually want it to rest on there, I think this one might be a little bit off, but you might be able to pull this one down. So you can play with that. Yeah, so you can start to see, I'm doing this really simply. I'm just trying to get the geometry out there. I don't have any materials on here. You know, I feel like I need maybe a few more big elements, or I also, maybe this is a little bit too high. Maybe I want to like see a little bit more of this. Let's put that on there. This Adamare, I don't know, I feel like that should be bigger. So I hold down T to transform it. Maybe I move that around. Or maybe I rotate it. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out exactly where this goes, how it goes. All right, let's see. These are, you know, some more shapes that we might want to use. Maybe we'll use a big cone. You know, and this stuff doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't really have to be physically balanced or possible. You could have some stuff floating in the air if you'd like. It's really your project. Maybe we'll put this a little bit diagonal so you can see the edge of this. The geometry feels a little bit rough still, so let's put some more segments in there. And so, yeah, I can move around on these other cameras, these other views. Playing around with this. Eventually I'll put lighting in, so maybe I want to start thinking about where the shadows might cast, what could be interesting. Let's see what other things we could try. So within the cylinder, I think there's some interesting pieces, some interesting options you can look at. Let's see. You'll see that some of them have extra options here. So there's actually, well, you know, you might want to add some fillets on this to get a little bit nicer, smoother. There's also this option to slice this, so you could have like a half piece or basically any kind of piece that you wanted. You could put the angles in. I'm gonna maybe make this so it's not super big. 40. Actually, maybe I'll make a duplicate of this, and so one of them is sliced from 0 to 180, and then maybe the other one I'll slice from 180 to 360. That'll give me kind of this complete piece, but I can texture them separately so they look a little bit different. As you move along, you might want to make groups. So these pieces I want to work to travel together. So I might select them both and hit Option G. That'll create this null, this group around it. Maybe I'll call this cylinder halves. I think it's important to kind of like label your files as you go. Label your work. Yeah, it's maybe something like that. Let's see where that's located. If you ever want to zoom in on something, you can hit the O button, and that will center in on that. So you can see what that looks like. I think that's floating in the air. That was floating in the air, but you know, maybe I want that to float in the air, or maybe I don't. You can play with that. And maybe I could stack these, so I just hit Control, click and drag, and maybe I'll just like zoom in a little bit and maybe stack them. That the repetition could be nice. Maybe we'll do it one more time. Click and drag. Something like that. I mean, at this point, I might start to bring materials in because I think I have some forms here and it's starting to take some shape. But again, since I'm kind of doing this as I go, maybe I'll get inspired as I start to bring in colors. So yeah, let's look at the materials here. We could build our own materials. We can select the different channels. All right, so I've opened up a new material, and maybe I'm just gonna grab a color, and maybe I think about some simple color harmonies that I might want to do. Here's just a simple blue material. If you want a little bit of a texture on it, maybe we could put a little bit of noise here. Make the scale kind of small. Maybe bring down the contrast so it's not so pronounced, but it just gives it a little bit of a texture. You could start to throw that on there, see what that looks like. You can see there's a little bit of that noise there. So we could build our textures this way. One other place where you can grab textures, and it's a good start, is something called the asset browser. That's up here in the corner. If you're on an older version of Cinema 4D, it used to be the content browser, which I think used to be a tab along this edge. But you can look at within the asset browser, there are a bunch of different things that you can grab. There are a lot of things in materials which I think are kind of interesting. So we could, there's glass as a base for glass. You could pull this up and just download the selected one that you need. Or I think you can actually just click it and drag it, and it will just bring it here onto your scene. I think, so you can actually see we have a glass texture that we just got right from here. There's some nice things, some glossy textures already. Leather, metal is always kind of nice too. Maybe we'll make this piece metal if we can get it on there. You could also click and drag this way. Whoops. Sometimes that's a little bit easier. And I think right now we don't really have a good lighting setup. We just have like default lighting, but you can get a sense of kind of what those things are like, and what are some other ones we might want to use. Maybe we like Terra Cotta, so we throw that on there, and I think that should be on that. Yeah, so we can go work with these as they are, or what's nice about this is you can kind of get a sense of how they're set up. You can go into here and look at what's been activated. And you can play with these too. Like if you don't like this color, or I think this was loaded as a layer to get this color, but you could mix different colors together as you needed to kind of change them. Let's grab maybe one more. Maybe concrete, I think I've always liked concrete. And we'll put that on this pedestal. Again, I'm kind of going at this really quick. So, I could change this endlessly, but I'm just gonna kind of go with it. But you can see we don't have any lighting, but we do have some textures, and we can start to play with that. And I think we're gonna just keep adding to that. One other thing that maybe we need is a wall, a background, and you could set up a background, or I like to use maybe a plane, kind of control it. I'll set up to 90 degrees. Let's scale that. It's big. And then we just kind of move it back. And maybe we'll, I don't know, maybe we'll start to reuse some of these textures. You'll see that things like, you know, the noise, when it's applied to something really large, it gets like scaled up a little bit. We'll keep playing with this. I think at this point, maybe we should play with lighting, start to get a better idea of what this is going to look like. Again, this may really slow things down, and you might need to play with this a little bit. Yeah, maybe we'll start with a few area lights to kind of set up the scene. So I brought in this area light. You can see what that does. You can see where the camera's set up, and one thing that I always like to think about is, what are the multiple sources of light that are out there? What does it look like? And usually, one good rule of thumb is to think about, you know, one main light source, and then maybe you have a fill light or something that kind of, you know, makes it so that it's not super harsh shadows all the way around. So I'm just looking at different views here. This I've set up as, I think, as a area light, and I want to turn on. I do want to turn on shadowing here, so we'll turn on shadow map soft. For example, this is just one light, and you'll see that it's probably a little bit too strong, maybe casting shadows here that are too dark. So maybe we want, and like along this edge, you know, maybe we want to fill that in with a fill light. So we're going to create a separate light. And that light maybe is not as strong. This one is at 100%, so we'll grab another light. Let's do this. This area light is directional, so you should see that. I think I set it to Omni Light, which that might also work. There's different lighting setups, but kind of want if this is where the main light is, I want to maybe like fill in some of those shadows with this light here. Just want to rotate this a little bit, and yeah, maybe it's moved back. If it's not quite as strong, maybe it's like at 50%. Let's see what that looks like. It might be too much because you already have this one strong light, and so yeah, now you're getting some of those shadows a little bit less dark, but you know, maybe that's a little bit too much, or you can play around with what that looks like. The light also maybe it has a little bit of color to it. Maybe it's a little bit of a warm light. Let me see what else is there. Maybe this light is also up in the air a little bit. Yeah, and then the other thing I might do to give it a more realistic look as well is to add in a sky and maybe add in an HDR. Maybe you'll catch some reflections, or you could actually light the scene with it a little bit. It's not going to cast shadows, which is why I have these other lights in there. So we can bring a sky object in here. We'll make a new material. And yeah, we'll turn off reflectance. The sky texture, you could either put it in the color or the luminance. If you use luminance, then you'll want to use. I think this is a studio HDR image. I could look at that one more time. So we'll use that. We're gonna put that into the luminance channel, and we'll put that into here, and let's just see what that looks like. And what that does is you can see it in some of these reflective objects, but you can also see it's kind of adding a little bit more light kind of all around. Let me check my render settings here as well. Some things you might want to add. Ambient occlusion will give you these a little bit nicer shadows. You could turn on the global illumination, and that will kind of bounce light, and especially with this sky, it'll be a little bit nicer. But the renders will take a lot of time, so I'm doing a preview here. I would probably maybe leave this off towards the end, or maybe like turn it on and off as I go to kind of get a sense of this, because this can really slow you down if you're doing this over and over. So you can see even just right now, it's still calculating, and it's going to take some time. All right, so we're gonna keep moving along. It'll take some time. Some things I noticed is I feel like this cylinder, the edge was a little bit sharp, so I want to fillet it a little bit. Let's see. I don't love the composition here in the framing, so maybe I'm just going to move this off for a second so I can, yeah, maybe it's more interesting to see it like something like this. I would also say within the camera, this is probably a good thing to point out. In the camera, you can change the different lenses, so maybe you want a normal lens. You can change the sensor size as well. You could change the focus distance, which I think we'll do that at the very end. Maybe look at adding depth of field to this, but maybe to keep it, I'm trying to think what I would like. Maybe something like this. Like I said, I'm gonna turn off the global illumination for right now, just so it's a lot faster. Get a sense of what that looks like. I'm doing this, and I just kind of take notes of like, do I like that shadow back there? Maybe that's kind of interesting. That looks like it's maybe in too much shadow, so I might want to move that over. Maybe I don't like seeing as much of this as I'm seeing. Again, my composition is going to be a little bit smaller. It's not going to be vertical. I'm going to close my asset browser to kind of give you a better idea. Now you can see the kind of the framing of what it's going to look like. So that's also a little bit easier. Maybe I'll move it up a little bit. Yeah, maybe something like that is good. And then I'll just put that back on there so I don't move it around. Let's just kind of go and maybe play with some more textures. I just wanted to build some more textures here. So create a copy of this. I think blue and orange is the color theme I'm going to go for. Maybe blue, orange, and kind of like a cream. Let's do that. Maybe we'll add a little bit of this. Oh, sorry, I was in the wrong channel. So I want to make sure I'm in the right channel. This is the orange. Add a little bit of a Fresnel and just maybe kind of mix it down a little bit. And maybe we just start to play. Again, remember these are half cylinders, so we could play with that. Maybe this one is the kind of cream color. I'll make another layer that's maybe a shiny blue. Again, I'm going kind of quick with this. see what that looks like. Do I like the color of that? I don't know. I'm just playing around with this. Let's see. Just gonna keep making some materials here. I might want to put like one more light. I feel like there's a little bit too much shadow there, so maybe I'll have one more area light. Back here, and all right, so this is another light back here, and this is actually kind of like a rim light or a backlight that will kind of maybe outline some of these forms. So this is another technique we could use, and this is kind of like a setup that you'll see in photo shoots and stuff, like a 3-point lighting setup where you have like a main light, maybe a fill light, and this backlight or a rim light. I probably need to turn this down a little bit. And let's just see what that looks like. So I think you're catching a little bit of that light back there. Maybe we could turn this up actually, just to see a little bit more closely. Oh, and then I guess if you want to turn your shadows on, let's see. This is an area light. This is an area light. I think we turn the shadow maps off for this. So I think this might create some dual shadows, and this might actually also just, again, create maybe more realistic, nuanced lighting. It does feel like that back shadow got a little bit less prominent. I feel like my composition is a little bit weird with this cylinder, this cone, so I'm going to move this up a little bit. I think since the angle changed, or camera angle changed, it feels a little bit different, a little out of place. Maybe we need to fill this a little bit, make it a little bit nicer. And I think it needs a few more rotational segments to make it cleaner. Let's see what else we could do. I feel like it needs something in the background. And let's see, I don't think I like the concrete on that on the pedestal, but maybe it works better on this block. Could we put just a smoother texture on here? I'm going to just keep adding some more shapes in here. So this is a tube, and I'm going to change the orientation. So yeah, I wanted to kind of be looking out at us. Whoops. With the tube, we can also slice it. So we might want to, let's see, I think we can go 180 to 360 will give us this type of view. So if we want to make like an arch, we could do something like that. Scale it up or scale it down as you need to. We'll grab that, and maybe I'll move all of these up at once. I feel like they're getting blocked now. We could move them this way, and I mean, I really could spend all day tweaking this if I wanted to, but should probably start to move on here. So yeah, let's just keep adding some different textures on here. Let's see. I don't know if I love this texture that was created. We'll see. I think there might be like a little bit too much noise on this texture, so I might actually just turn that bump off. Yeah, so we've kind of created, just created a quick geometric composition. Maybe I'll move this up a little bit. Just want to make sure we're not in trouble there. And yeah, when I'm ready to export this out, I'll just set this up. Current frame is fine. Maybe I'll just export this out as a PNG. So we have this like little composition 1, and you could let's see. Maybe at this point we'll turn on the global illumination. Ambient occlusion is on. There's something here called Denoiser. That's one of these things that sometimes is helpful to get rid of the noise, but I'll just leave that off for now. And we can render this out. Now that we've set this up, it's going to take some time because this is going to use global illumination. All right, so after some time, this took 2 minutes and 41 seconds. I kind of have my render. Yeah, and at this point, what you see here, I think, is very different than what you see when you're editing. I like to look at this and sort of take some notes and try to work on them. I would say it feels a little bit bright, like this orange kind of feels bright. These hot spots are bothering me a little bit. I wonder if I can turn down the lighting. This texture, the concrete that I got from Cinema, I don't love it. So maybe I'll change that to something else. Look at these things more closely. I think I like some of the shadows and things that are happening. I think the form is okay for what it is. But yeah, maybe that the light, this primary light needs to be moved a little bit over or brought down a little bit. And so I think this is a good time to just like look at what you've made and work on it. Maybe there's maybe there's too much orange here. Maybe I should use a darker orange or a more neutral orange in the background. Those are just some of the things I'm thinking about, and I want to go through and yeah, make some changes. And you could really edit this for a long time. So as I said, I'll go back into my cinema file, and yeah, maybe the first thing is this light feels a little bit maybe too strong. We could play with the power. I think right now I have the background, and maybe I want to write this here. Yeah, the background feels a little bit too bright, so maybe I'll take this material, which is this one here. Maybe I'll make another version that's like a little bit has a little bit less saturation. Maybe it's a little bit darker too. So it's still in kind of the same color scheme. Again, I might just turn off global illumination for right now just to get a quick preview. It's going to look different because the global illumination will make it kind of brighter and stuff, but I want to maybe see if I'm going in the right direction. Or maybe I'll mix in a gradient in here. And just kind of mix it a little bit. Okay, I think I said I want to make a new material for this. So, you could also make your own materials with images and things like that. So we could load an image in here. So School of Motion has a free texture pack that you can download, and I could maybe just grab something from there. So for example, they have like this asphalt texture. This is a PSD file. I'm not going to move it for right now, but the idea is we could use that, or if it's a JPEG, and we can create a texture that way. So what if we want that to be asphalt instead of concrete? And I think that that image was just a little bit nicer. That to me feels kind of like more realistic. So that could be a nice, easy way to get your custom textures in there. Actually, I think also that brings down the values. I feel like it must be the global illumination that's kind of blowing this out a little bit, because this seems a lot darker. I just wanted to show also, if you wanted to make to make more complicated textures, you could do something like if you have different channels that you want to activate. For example, I think, yeah, these like for concrete, this is an example. These are some textures that you can load these into the different channels. So if you load this into the specular, you'll get a different type of reflection, and maybe there's kind of like a grittiness in it. And there's things like if you want to put in a normal map in the channels, again, you can load those separately into these channels, and you'll get more kind of just more nuanced textures. But I think this is okay for right now, but I just wanted to show how you might access some of those things. All right, so I think there was that piece I wanted to do. I think I was saying that maybe the hotspots, or maybe this is too reflective. Yeah, so maybe we just really turn this down a lot. maybe we bring in a gradient. Could mix it a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit more interesting. I think this sky could also be creating a lot of light in here. I think it's on luminance. We could turn this down a little bit. Go to global illumination. You could even add some color correction to this, or you could also do this in post. You might be able to tone it down. Let's bring the brightness down a little bit. Yeah, and so what I'm going to do is actually a nice way, if you're working on a still image, a really, I don't know, this is maybe helpful, maybe not, is like a lot of times I'll just move the frame over. It's set to render the current frame, and so what it will do is just attach the frame number onto the render, so I don't have to change the name of the file, but it'll just, you can see it says 00001, and so this is like a quick way to do multiple versions. Maybe you just move the frame over and you can export these out, and I do think it is helpful to do a lot of versions, and again, look at the final result, because the render always looks a little bit different than it does in the program, and try to correct based off of that. All right, so this is the render that just came out. This was a little bit faster, it looks like, probably because fewer reflective surfaces, or just things like that. Things that will really slow things down, like glass and things like that. So if you want a speedier render, maybe it's thinking about simpler materials. Yeah, and I think this one is getting better. I like to have these and compare them. I feel like there's more separation from the background and the foreground. The lighting feels a little bit better. It's still kind of maybe blown out a little bit there. I want to do one last thing to show kind of one thing you can do with cameras, which is adding depth of field. Adding like some areas that are blurry based on how far they are from the camera lens and the focus length. So I think the first thing I need to do is actually just make something in the foreground that I want to blur out. So let me grab this is like a pyramid, and maybe I'll just scale this up a little bit, and I'm gonna you can see it's like really close to the camera, closer than all the other things, and I think that should be good. So what I want is for this to be blurred out, and let me turn the global illumination off. But when I look at it right now, because I'm not using depth of field in the camera, everything is going to be in focus. So this piece should still kind of look crisp, but I want that to blur out. So there's a few things I need to do. You can see the lighting. Actually, I kind of like having that thing in shadow. I really actually kind of like the lighting maybe without the global illumination. I wonder if maybe I can turn it off. The top button here is in the render, in the editor, and the other button below is in the render. And I think I wonder if I turn that off, if I will. Well, I'm missing. Maybe I like it without the global illumination. Maybe the bouncing back and forth actually makes it a little bit too bright. That's just one thing I saw. But I wanted to talk about the depth of field. So here you can see it was crisp. What we need to do to enable depth of field is go to the physical render, and what that will let us do is access depth of field. Or sorry, it's under physical. That tab popped up, and they'll go to depth of field, and we can set that up, and that works with the camera that we set up in the scene. So here is our camera. I'm going to take this off for a second so I can play with the settings. Okay, let's look at a few things up here. We need to set the focal distance. We should be able to just move the focal distance to where we think we want it, and I would put it, whoops, be careful about that. You can, where is most of the stuff in focus that you want to be? It's probably around here, and from there we can play around with, let's see, in the physical settings, what we'll do is we'll go to, what we want to do is, in order to make it more blurry, we want this f-stop to be smaller. We want the number to be smaller. What that actually means is that the lens, the aperture is actually, I believe, going to be bigger, but it creates more of a blur. So if we looked at this right now at f-stop 8, it's probably still going to be mostly in focus. We're really looking at this object right here, and you can see it's still pretty sharp. But if I bring this down to like 1, it should start to be a little bit less in focus and maybe even more blurry. Part of this is the distance too. So it's like if you want depth of field, you want to make sure your objects are kind of further apart, just like in After Effects, and you can play with that. And sometimes, you know, your depth of field could be too shallow. You know, you want to make sure you can read things or see the textures. But I think as we get out to this part, you'll start to see a little bit more blurriness. Yeah, that does look a little bit blurry, and I think if you do something like 0.2, which is not really, I don't think that's physically possible, but we can see what that looks like. Let's see if that's even more blurred out. I think it's even getting to the point where this stuff is getting blurry, and it's actually, like, that is a little bit too much. You can see this side is getting super blurry. And if you wanted a really soft focus, that could be the way to do it. Where it's going to be the crispest is where that focal distance is, and you can always adjust that. But yeah, you can start to see kind of what that looks like. I feel like that is too much, so I might bring it back down. Like I think 1.4 or something like that might be okay. If you feel like you need this piece to be even blurrier, maybe you just bring it closer to the camera. Let's scale it down a little bit. Like this, I think this should come out looking pretty blurry. Let's see. I think the last piece wanted to maybe bring this reflectance down a little bit. Maybe that gradient was a little bit too bright. I think that was the main thing I was looking at. Okay, so I've got that set up, and maybe I don't need the color correction. I kind of want to just run this and see what it looks like with physical. I'm actually not going to do the global illumination because I kind of like this darker look. And that's up to you to try out. I could probably go into the global illumination settings and adjust that as well, or again, maybe I just turn the lights down a little bit because the global illumination will just kind of looking at the bounce back of the light. All right, so this is the final render. I've done 3 renders, and you can see the evolution. I actually think I prefer this one the most. I think the darkness of the shadows, it feels moodier, a little bit less blown out. I added some depth of field. I used the cameras and turned on the physical render so I could get this, and it adds, I don't know, a little bit of mystery maybe. yeah, but hopefully this video is helpful for you to kind of see the process of building this kind of composition out of some simple forms, and just looking at ways to texture and light and use cameras, and just, get a sense of the process. And if you have any tips or tricks, I'd love to hear them, so just let me know. And good luck working on this.